Matthew chapter number 11. We're going to look at just a couple of verses of Scripture. We're going to reference others, but we're going to look at what we're calling through this series, Keystone Habits. Now, I'm sure most of you probably have never heard of the term Keystone Habits. Is this on? Am I on? Is this on? I can't tell. Am I? There we go. Most of you probably never heard of the Keystone Habits. We all know what habits are. We're going to talk about it here in just a minute. But as we think about Keystone Habits, we're going to see the difference between Keystone habits and normal habits, if you will. And again, by the way, when we think of habits, we always think negatively, don't we? We never think of good habits. We always think of biting our nails or smoking or you fill in the blank. But there are actually good habits that we all have. We don't talk about them as much, and there's good habits that we should all strive to have into our lives. Look at verse 28 of Matthew chapter 11. The Bible says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden." You've experienced that in your life. Labor, being full of labor and heavy laden. I feel like that sometimes. And he says, "Come unto me, and I will give you rest." And I want you to really focus in on verse 29. He says, "Take my yoke upon you," and look at this next part. We kind of skip over this often. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." And it really is an awesome thing for us to be able to take this kickoff of this new series of doing a deep dive into being with Christ. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to look at some different habits. And we're calling them Keystone habits that not only I think we need to have in our lives, but I believe mainly we need to have them in our lives because we see them in the life of Jesus. And we're going to talk about those here in just a minute. So really today is really just laying the groundwork for what the next several weeks are going to look like. This is the appetizer, if you will. So if you want the entree and the dessert, you have to keep coming back. And I hope that you will and make these things a priority in your lives. But I got to thinking, I don't know if any of you have watched much of the Olympics. I know that the Olympics viewing has been dramatically down, and there's several reasons for that, I understand. I know it's hard to want to watch people who don't really care, to represent the country, and there's many reasons for different things. But we like to watch it from now and then, every now and then. We have not watched a lot of it this year just for the sake of time, to be honest with you. But when we're home, we'll cut it on because there's certain events we like to see because we don't watch them a whole lot. My wife likes to watch the indoor volleyball, and she likes to watch the men and women do the volleyball. And there's unbelievable athletes. Of course, everybody's like 7 foot tall when they play that, and they just are really, really good. I like the sports that we don't talk about a whole lot. I like the sports that are like that you've never heard of before. The ones where they only play like in other countries. It seems like it's just some of them are just crazy. I like the Winter Olympics when they roll. I like curling and stuff like that. I like the ones that you don't get to see a whole lot. We watched synchronized swimming the other day. That tells you about our family. I heard it. We watched synchronized swimming in our household. Just different things like that. I like the unique and unusual things. But one of the ones we do like to watch is swimming. And we enjoy watching these competitors, unbelievable swimmers. And we've been swimming a good bit this summer in our neighbor's pool. They're so nice to let us swim at their house and from time to time. And, of course, Paisley learned how to swim this year. And so we've been trying to teach her more and more and help her get more comfortable. And Lincoln's right there. She's so close to getting there. But she just, I don't know, she holds her breath and she'll go. But she just doesn't want to keep her head above the water for whatever reason. And so we're trying to teach both of them, but we're watching swimming, and that's part of the reason we're watching synchronized swimming, to show them this is what you got to do to swim. You got to keep your head above water. You got to be able to come up and take a breath so you don't drown and be able to hold yourself and different things. Well, I got to thinking about what we could talk about with our habits, and one person came to mind, and that guy's name is Michael Phelps. And I know Michael Phelps doesn't swim anymore. Now he's a commentator for swimming. But I want you to think back to 2008. I know that's a long time ago. But back in 2008, the Olympics were in Beijing. And Michael Phelps was the talk of the Olympics. I mean, he was the one that everybody was talking about. And there's a reason why he should have been. Because at that time, he already had won 9 gold medals. Okay? 9 gold medals. And he would go down, of course, we know, as the greatest Olympian the world has ever seen, because by the time he retired, he'd won more than 23 gold medals, more than any athlete in the history of the games. Now, there are many reasons for Michael Phelps' success as a swimmer. He has the right body. He has big hands. He has a long, powerful torso. He has shorter legs. And he has feet This is true. He has feet that can rotate beyond 90 degrees. That's kind of odd, isn't it? But and what I read is that Michael Phelps can bend his feet more than most ballerinas can bend their feet. I mean, it's just amazing to think how God makes people's bodies differently. But the one problem he had before his races was getting nervous. And I put this picture up here. This is Michael Phelps' game face. Now this was from, I think it was from 2012 at I think it was the Rio Olympics, and there was a guy from Australia that was warming up right in front of him, and they thought this guy could compete with Michael Phelps for the gold medal. And so Michael Phelps put this mean mug face on there to kind of just, he was in his zone. But if you can tell, he's got headphones on underneath his hoodie there. But so he got nervous, and so his coach came up with this idea that before big races, he wanted him to get in more of a routine, to get in a habit of doing the same things over and over and over again. So before every race, Michael Phelps would do the same things. Even when the challenges got bigger, even when it was the biggest stage in the world, the gold medal race, he did the exact same things. And some of his habits were these. He would eat his breakfast of eggs and oatmeal and 4 high-calorie shakes on time, and he never changed the menu. In fact, in the days of his legit serious training, Michael Phelps would consume up to 12,000 calories a day. That's just insane to me because he was burning it off. He would do the same warm-ups and the same stretches. He would put on his racing suit, which you know those racing suits are so tight. He said it could take up to 20 minutes to get your racing suit on. It doesn't make me feel as bad about putting my jeans on anymore, does it? He would put on his headphones, as you see the picture there, and he would listen to the same music mix that he had been training to. And the last thing he would do is he would put this imaginary videotape on in his brain to visualize every element of the race. He would literally close his eyes, he would take deep breaths, and he would visualize how many strokes it's going to take for him to get from one side to the other. I mean, it's not just chance, it's not just luck that he gets in there and is fast. He has the right process. So he's on the starting block there in 2008, excuse me, at the Olympics. And you can just remember those videos of him doing his stretches, and especially when he did the wing stretch, and his arms are so long, he's doing this and he's slapping his own back. I mean, it's just crazy how long this guy's arms are, and he's trying to get loose. So here he's going for his 10th gold medal of his career. It's the 200-meter butterfly. It's Beijing 2008, and now we're going to see if those habits are going to pay off for him. Well, when Phelps dove into the water, most people didn't know this at the time, but his goggles were crooked. And his goggles were leaking water. And so there was nothing he could do, because you understand, in that amount of time, a swimmer can't stop and fix your goggles in your middle of a gold medal race. So he had to keep going. Well, of course, the problem got worse and worse and worse. And by the time Phelps finally reached the final turn, he was almost blind. He couldn't see the black line that was on the bottom of the pool to kind of help you know when to turn around or any of those types of things. But he didn't panic. Why? Because he had trained for this. He had habits. Actually, I read this, as part of his training, his coach had him swim in a pitch dark pool. Now, can you imagine? That's how freaky that would be, swimming in a pitch black pool. But he had him do it just in case something ever happened where he couldn't see. He wanted him to get the feel of how many strokes it took, and just kind of the feel of when you were getting close to the edge. Now, as he was making the final turn, he entered into his sprint, and he neared the finish. Of course, the crowd's going wild, but he didn't know what place he was in. He didn't know if they were cheering for him or for somebody else. He wasn't sure. He didn't know if he had the lead, if he had been overtaken. And so as he made that last turn, he started counting his strokes. He knew it was going to take him somewhere around 19, 20, or 21 strokes to get to the end of the pool and to the finish line. So he counted them off in his head as he's swimming as fast as he can. 19, 20. And he felt like he needed a really big push on 21. So he made an extra big push on 21, and his hand touched the edge of the pool. When he ripped off his goggles and he kind of cleared out his eyes a little bit, he looked at the scoreboard, and beside his name, he saw not only first place, but he saw the letters WR beside his name. Anybody know what that means? World record. So not only did he win gold, but he blind got the world record in the 200-meter butterfly. Now, it's amazing to me, and it's just amazing the preparation these guys go through. But what prepared him for that? It was his habits. His habits prepared him for the big race and for the big win. And what that story is it shows us the power of habits. The things we do over and over and over again. Things that become easier and easier for us to do until we can do them blindfolded. Or until we can do them without even thinking about them. And that's really what this series, if you will, is all about. It's the habits. It's the 5 keystone habits that we find in the life of Jesus. And my hope is that these habits would become a part of who you are. I hope they become a part of who I am if they aren't already. So ultimately we can all be greater followers of Jesus because it all starts with a relationship. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, the most important thing you can do is to give your heart and life to Him. But if you are saved, if you're already a believer, already a Christian, you know you're saved without a shadow of a doubt, then don't we all desire to become greater followers of Him? Don't we all desire to be greater witnesses for Him? We've just got done with a series. We looked at the 5 different targets that we were trying to shoot at to become more like Jesus. And it was being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. And I believe the single most important target for us to aim at is being with God, because it's all about growing in our relationship with Him. As we mentioned back in our series, our doing, what we do, flows out of our being. You see, if you're with Christ like you should, and you have a relationship with Him like you should, then you're naturally going to be the witness you should be. And you're naturally going to be a cheerful and sacrificial giver. And you're naturally going to want to go and tell everybody you can about Him. That's just the way our relationship is made. That's who we are as people. And so the big questions that we are tackling in this series is how do we grow in our relationship with God? How do we grow in our relationship with God? What does that practically look like? You say, I know my relationship with God is important, but where do I start? I mean, I'm saved, but where do I start when I want to grow in my relationship with Him? Well, this morning I want to answer a couple of those questions, and the 3 questions that we're going to look at this morning are these. Why should we aim at Jesus? The first question we're going to answer here in just a second. Secondly, how will Keystone habits help us become more like Jesus? And then finally, what are those Keystone habits that we find in the life of Jesus? So the first question, why should we aim at Jesus? Now, we spent time talking about this when we went through being in our last series, but I want to kind of refresh a little bit just this idea of why we should aim at Him. You see, Jesus, we understand, was the only one that has ever walked the face of the earth that was in perfect relationship with God, right? So if we're going to grow in our relationship with God, it just makes sense that we should aim to be like Him. To be and to ultimately do like Jesus did. Guess what? We first need to have a relationship with God. So if our aim is to be like Jesus, then guess what? Aim for Jesus. Just makes sense, doesn't it? If our goal is to be like Him, then we should aim at Him. Let's try to be like Him. Not like the greatest Christian you can think of. Not like even the Apostle Paul. But let's aim straight at the source. I want to be like Jesus Christ. And Jesus said, as we read in Matthew 11:29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls." So we are called to learn from Jesus. And as we do, we find that rest. We find out who we are. Our soul is at peace. One Bible version summarized it this way. It says, "Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it." That's what it said. Now think about that. That's what Jesus is saying. Listen, come learn about me. Look at how I do things and strive to be like me. Well, that is the goal of being like Jesus. That those things that Jesus did would just become natural in our lives. Just like Michael Phelps, we don't even have to think about those things. It's just what we do, and it's just who we are. You understand how important it is to aim at the right target, right? If you've ever been out in the woods before, you understand by being off just a degree in the woods can wreak havoc, right? I was just thinking yesterday we went to Tuscaloosa to celebrate Paisley's 8th birthday. And we gave her what we called a yes day, where basically whatever she wanted to do, we did. And so we went bowling, and we went to Chick-fil-A, and we went to spend some of her birthday money at Five Below, and just little stuff like that she wanted to do. That an 8-year-old is the greatest stuff in the world. And so we're doing that, and as we're going, Lincoln, she likes to say that she can see everything. So as we're going down, we're like 5 miles away from the bowling alley, and there's no way if you go in Tuscaloosa, you know. You can't see the bowling alley until you get right up on it because there's just buildings everywhere. We haven't even crossed the river yet. And Paisley goes, Lincoln goes, "I can see the bowling alley." I said, "Lincoln, you can't see that bowling alley." She said, "I can. It's right up there." Now she's pointing in the right direction, but I said, "Honey, I can't see the bowling alley. I know you can't see. We haven't even crossed the river yet. Look at all the trees. You can't see the bowling alley." So finally we get up to it, and she goes, "I told you I could see it." I was like, "Yeah, okay." But I got to thinking. Then she said, I said, "Honey, you say you can see everything, and you can't." I said, "You might as well could see Gigi's house," which is my mom lives in North Carolina. As you could see that bowling alley a few miles up the road. She goes, "Oh, I can see Gigi's house too." and she was just being funny. And she was trying to point in the direction she thought Gigi's house was, and I pointed to a direction that really was the direction where Gigi's house would be in North Carolina. But I got to thinking, even though that was the general direction, I was going to say if we just walk straight in this line for, or if we drive straight for how many hours, we'll finally get to her house. But I got to thinking, because it's right along with my sermon, if we were just off by 1 degree, we'd end up in Maine somewhere instead of ending up in North Carolina. It matters what you aim at. It matters that you have the right GPS coordinates in your phone if you're going to drive there. It matters if you're shooting at a target, which target that you're shooting at. Because if you're just off a little bit, it can lead you way off the path. And the reason I'm saying this so many times is because I want to be as clear as humanly possible, because I think there's many people who have good intentions, that they love Jesus and they want to be more like Jesus. They want to be greater followers of Him. And yet I believe it feels like, collectively, it feels like we're losing ground in this battle, if you will. It feels like people, if I were to ask every one of you, I think probably most of you would say, yeah, I want to be more like Him. I want to be a better follower of Jesus. But across the board, we see not just our church, but churches all over the country, attendance is down. And we see there's a disconnect somewhere. I want to be a better follower of Jesus, but I'm not willing to be like Him. Those things cannot be the case. And so we can have all the right intentions in the world, but if you're just off a little bit, it can lead to devastating consequences. You see, we can want to be like Jesus, but if we're not hitting the right target, something is off. We all know this last year and a half has been a crazy year. But I was looking at some things. There's 2 companies I think that have probably benefited the most, or at least very much so from this. And 2 of the ones that have benefited the most is Zoom. I think most people didn't know what Zoom was before the pandemic, and now everybody, I think, in the world has been on at least one Zoom phone call or meeting online, the video conferencing chat thing that you can do on your phone or your iPad or your computer. Zoom, and the other one is Tesla. Tesla is these electric vehicles that get to be more popular and they get to be more affordable. And by the way, I think they're interesting. I think it would be great. I would love to have a Tesla to be able to save on gas money if we if we didn't live so far away from everything, being in rural Alabama. But I think about these things, and I was looking at, I'm not much of an investor, okay? But at one time in my life, I did go through this idea where I was looking at investing in like these penny stocks, trying to hit it big on these penny stocks, where you put money in and you hope in a week or so you'll get big and then you get out. I did that when I was in high school, or in college a little bit. But if you invested $1 in Tesla on January 1st, you now have $5.15 for that dollar. That's a pretty good return on your investment. By the way, for Zoom, if you put $1 in Zoom on January 1st, you'd have now $4.35, which again is a really, really, really good investment. But you have to be careful. You say, why do you have to be careful? Well, a lot of people, when this pandemic hit, knew that Zoom was going to be a big thing. So they tried to invest in Zoom. But what's crazy is that Zoom, the company we all know and love-hate relationship with, goes by the ticker symbol ZM, okay? But there is a completely different company called Zoom Technologies. Their ticker symbol is ZOOM, Zoom. So you had a lot of people who thought they were getting in on this big video conference chat, investing in Zoom, ZOOM, putting money in, and they were investing in this technologies company they had never even heard of before. It got to be so bad that the SEC actually had to stop trading because so many people were investing in the wrong one because they thought they were trying to hit it big. And they had all the intentions in the world. They were going to be rich, right? We're going to invest in Zoom. But they were invested in the wrong stock. Just like Tesla. Tesla's is TSLA. But if you're dyslexic or sometimes you're not paying attention, there was one called TLSA. Real close. That a lot of people invested in. And they lost everything because they invested in it. When they thought they were investing, hey, I'm investing in this electric company. This is the future. I'm going to be rich. And it turns out they lost everything because they invested in Tiziana Life Sciences instead. Now, think about that. And you understand where I'm going with this. And by the way, I'm not offering investment advice, okay, by any stretch of imagination. Please do not take my advice at all. But my point here is that we can have all the best intentions in the world. But if we don't take dead aim at the one with a capital O that we're trying to be like, then guess what? We're going to end up thinking we own some Tesla when we really own some crazy life sciences company we've never heard of before and lost everything. We got to aim at the right things. So why should we aim at Jesus? Because our goal is to be like Him. And if our goal is to be like Him, we want to aim at Him and be like He was and is. The second question I want to answer this morning is, how will Keystone habits help us become more like Jesus? How will they help us? Well, did you know that most of the choices that you make every single day, they feel like you're making decisions, but did you know that a lot of the choices you make have nothing to do with your decision making? They're habits that we do every single day. Now, some of you probably realize that if you think about it, some of the things you do. There was a study done by Duke University that found that more than 40% of our actions that we perform every day aren't actual decisions, but habits. There are things we do every single day that we don't even think about. And that could be a lot of things, whatever it may be. The meals you order, what we say to our kids every night, how much we save or spend, how often we exercise, all those things have enormous impacts on our health and our productivity and our financial security. But again, 40% of what we do just comes from habits, things that are ingrained in us. So realize, thinking that, you're on autopilot for about half the day. Think about that. Now, some of you feel like you're on autopilot all day long, right? And I understand that feeling. And especially when school starts back, it's going to get even worse, I'm sure. But 40% of everything you do every single day comes from the habits you have in your life. So if that's the case, then don't you think we should take a look at what habits we have in our lives and make sure they're the right types of habits? So what's a habit exactly? Well, a habit, just a habit, is a regular tendency or practice, especially one that's hard to give up. That's what a habit is. Now again, we always think they're negative, right? We always think of nail biting and all the different things we know we shouldn't do. But there are good habits that we have, but they're hard to give up. Some of you are a lot stingier than others when it comes to your money. Some of you need to be more stingier than you are with your money because you just don't think about things and you just spend willy-nilly. And we think there's all different types of people, but there are habits that I'm made differently than my wife. My wife would be happy to spend money on anything and everything. She sees something, she says, okay, let's do it. Oh, we've got the money, let's do it. And I'm just like, honey, yeah, but okay, let's think about this. And I'd rather not do this right now. And we're totally different people, but that's how we're made. So if that's the case, if these things are things that are part of our life, what habits do we have in our lives, good or bad? Habits serve some sort of purpose in our lives or we wouldn't do them. I mean, I read about one about picking your nose. All right? Some of you pick your nose. I got 4 kids. I see a lot of nose picking in my household. I'm not immune to nose picking in my household. We call it digging for gold. And sometimes we have kids that eat the gold after it's done. That's okay. We may be the only ones, but that's just the case. It's just kids, okay? And I'm pleading the fifth on whether Ashley's involved in that or not. I'm just kidding. No, she's not. It's just the kids. Don't even joke like that when you leave this room, okay? I know who you are if you do. But how about picking your nose in traffic? How many of you have ever driven down the road and, I don't know why we think you can't see in other people's windshield, and when we're in the car, we think people can't see in our windshield. I've been guilty of this one before, just riding down the road and you're sitting in traffic and you're just like, digging for gold. And everybody and their mama can see what you're doing, right? I mean, I don't know why we think, I can't tell you how many times I've looked across sitting in traffic, especially in Tuscaloosa, and looked across and seen grandmas to teenagers digging for gold up there and while they're in traffic. Did you know that an insurance provider did a study and found that 66% of all the people that responded to their survey admitted to picking their nose while they're driving in traffic? 66%. Okay, so most of you are nose pickers. That's fine, okay? I'm in that group with you sometimes while we're in traffic. That's okay. That's an example of a habit, isn't it? How about a more positive example? It's flossing your teeth. Or how about making your bed? Those are 2 things that I don't do as often as I nearly should, especially making your bed. I couldn't tell you the last time I made my bed, okay? It's probably when I was in college. But flossing your teeth. You see, we all have good habits. We all have bad habits in our lives. And a lifelong process that is not easy but is doable is breaking the bad habits and making some good habits. But there's also another level of habits in this category. And so we have habits, but they are keystone habits. That's what we're talking about. And that's kind of bringing this to a close, is keystone habits. A keystone habit is a habit that people introduce into their lives. One that they didn't already have, that they strive to make, that unintentionally carries over into other aspects of their lives. So this is not just something you do without thinking about. This is something you do that has other consequences in other areas of your life. Now, I doubt picking your nose has any other consequences outside of maybe a little nose soreness from time to time, okay? I don't know. But there are some habits that we can have in our lives that really can have big impacts on the other decisions we make in our lives. For instance, researchers have identified some keystone habits in our lives, and a couple of them probably you can figure out. Number one is exercising regularly. It's a keystone habit. When you make regular exercise a part of your life, it leads to increased patience, it leads to less stress, and it makes people more productive at work. It also is correlated with better eating and better sleep. And crazy enough, I read this, it's been linked to spending less on credit cards. It's crazy. I'm going to start getting my wife a gym membership then, if that's the case. By the way, that stays in here again. That doesn't leave this room. Now, I will say, I've started exercising a lot more over the last few months. Lost 85 pounds since February, and so I started walking and doing a lot of things differently. And I'll be honest with you, this summer I haven't done as much since we've had the kids. But when I exercise, I do a lot better job in the other areas of my life. I'll be honest with you, when I exercise, I naturally eat less. It's something about when I burn 600 calories in 45 minutes walking and running or doing whatever, I don't want to eat a Twinkie when I get home for whatever reason. It leads to another area of my life. For some reason, the days that I exercise, I seem to spend more time with God in my devotion time because I wake up in a better mood and I feel a little bit better from those things. Another keystone habit is making your bed every morning. I told you it's not one that I do, but it says it feels like it's a waste of time. I understand because you're going to rip it open the next day, but it says it's correlated with increased productivity. It says bed makers are more likely to like their jobs, own a home, exercise regularly, and feel well rested. And they also have stronger skills with sticking to a budget. Just by making your bed, you say, how in the world? It's a keystone habit. The third one, and it's flossing your teeth. One that I don't do near as much as I should. But did you know that many lifestyle coaches, and there are lifestyle coaches that are out there, but many lifestyle coaches start their new clients with introducing a habit in their lives, and the first one they introduce is say, hey, why don't you floss your teeth every morning when you wake up? First thing you do, brush your teeth and floss your teeth. So why would they get their clients to do that? Well, because they say it's something you don't want to do. And because you don't want to do it, if it's the first thing you do in the morning, what you're doing, you're subconsciously telling yourself through a habit that I'm a disciplined person. I can choose what's right over what I want to do, what's easy. So if I can floss my teeth first thing in the morning, then I can make better choices in what I eat. And I can make better choices with my finances. It's introducing these things to your life. So if the goal in life, now, by the way, this sermon's not about flossing your teeth and making your bed. But if the goal is to be a greater follower of Jesus, then don't you think it's important to have habits in our lives that point us to that goal? Habits in our lives that support that goal and not detract from that goal? Paul even tells us in 1 Timothy 4:8, he says, for bodily exercise profiteth little, but godliness is profitable unto all things, having promise of the life that now is and of that which is to come. And what he's telling Timothy is to discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. We all do that, don't we? But Paul reminds us that ultimately we are to become more like God, more like Jesus. Another way to say it is this. He says, exercise daily in God. Workouts in the gym are useful, but a disciplined life in God is far more so, making you fit both today and forever. Nothing wrong with exercise. I think, and by the way, it says it profiteth little, but it still profiteth. I think we should be involved in taking care of our bodies. But what's more important than that is having godly discipline that will last from this point forward, moving forward for the rest of our lives. Physical, mental, emotional habits are important, but nothing is more important than our spiritual habits. So the third question is this as we close. Then what are the keystone habits that Jesus showed in His life? You say Jesus had habits? Well, yeah. There's things that Jesus did that just came naturally to Him. There are things that He did that He modeled for us that I believe we need to strive to have in our lives. And that's what the next several weeks are going to be about. Each week we're going to take one of them. But what were those keystone habits? Well, I believe there's many things that He did that He practiced and preached, but there are 5 that I believe come to the top of the list. This is not an exhaustive list, but I believe it's important that we set targets and try to hit those targets. So what are they? Number 1, He committed to community. He committed to community. And we're going to talk about that next week. We're going to talk about committing ourselves around the right type of people. It matters a lot who you spend time with. If you don't think it does, We're going to talk about it next week, and I promise you, who you hang around matters a lot. I know we say that all the time to young people, don't we? Be careful who you hang around. But adults need to hang around the right type of people too. Yeah, I know you say, yeah, they do. I want my kids to hang around the right type of people, but I need to be hanging around the type of people who will help me in my spiritual walk and not hinder me in my spiritual walk. The second thing is studying Scripture. Basic. But what about if that was a habit in your life to every day spend time in God's Word? Number 3, to prioritize prayer. Number 4, to seek solitude, to take time to rest and to take time to reflect and meditate on God's Word. And then number 5, it's a big one. It's why Brother Adrian stays on our case so much, to choose church. It's important that we spend time with those things. And I believe if we practice these 5 habits, if we could get those 5 things that are on the screen in front of you, if we could get those 5 things right, not only would we grow in our relationship with God, but we'd also be more like who? Jesus. We would naturally be more like Him. So over the next few weeks, we're going to look at these things to help us be more like Him. I believe very clearly, you can put this on the screen, the next slide, people often overestimate what they can do in the short term. And they often underestimate what they can do in the long term. I want you to think about that. If I give you a short-term goal, most people are going to overestimate what they can actually do in that time period. And that's okay. I'd rather you shoot high and miss than not shoot at all. But the sad fact is I see more people who in the long term, they don't set big enough goals for themselves. They totally underestimate what they can do. I've seen Christians who say, well, I just can't do that. I know I should, but I just can't do that. Why not? Why not? Like the Christians who say, well, my filter's just broken. No, it's not. You just choose not to listen to your conscience and your filter when it tells you not to say what you're going to say or type what you're going to type on social media. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that says a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea that, listen, it may be difficult when you see those 5 things listed up there. That's kind of intimidating to add all 5 of those things in my life. But does that mean we shouldn't try? Does that mean we shouldn't take the first step today and say, God, I want to be more like you? God, help me to, as we start next week, to commit to being around the right types of people, to having my group, my sphere of influence be ones that are going to help me live for you more and not hinder me from spending time with you. If the friends that you hang around are ones that, I don't want to say make fun of you or criticize you or always trying to get you out of church, probably not the right type of friends to be hanging around. If the friends that you hang around are ones that have no desire for the things of God, I'm not saying we can't associate with those people because we need to associate with people to try to bring them to Christ, but it's probably not the people you need to be hanging around the most in your life. So my question to you is this. What is one step that you can do this week that's in the right direction? What's one step that you can take in the right direction this week for the cause of Christ? The bottom line is small habits done over a long time make a major difference in our life. And that's my challenge for you this week. This week, I don't care if it's make your bed this week. Hey, you say, what does that got to do with it? That ain't anything to do with spiritual. But it helps you. Hey, I can do it. I can make my bed every day this week. You know what I'm going to do this week? I'm honest with you. I'm going to floss my teeth every day this week. Now, I'm sorry if I've offended you that I don't already floss my teeth every day. I brush my teeth every day, a couple times a day. But I don't floss my teeth. I'm going to floss my teeth every day just to say, hey, I want to get in the habit of doing something that I'm not currently doing. And say, hey, I can do this. What's something you can do this week? Maybe it's flossing your teeth. Maybe it's cracking your Bible open and spending a couple of minutes every day in God's Word. Just do something this week. Take one small step. This journey of 1,000 miles, take one small step this week. And it can make all the difference in your lives. Never underestimate how our God can start something big through one small habit. Our Sunday school lesson this morning was about how God uses unusual people and unusual circumstances and unusual actions to accomplish His will. Think about in the Bible how many times God used things that we would never possibly imagine. How He took the little boy's lunch and fed 5,000 men, close to 15,000 people with a little boy's lunch. Think about how He talked about with faith as small as a mustard seed, how it can move mountains. Think about how salvation for the world came through what? A baby in a manger in Bethlehem. Aren't you glad that God can do some amazing things through small things? Aren't you glad? Because I am. Because you know what? That Sunday school lesson this morning reminded me I'm an unusual person. I'm a small person. I need God to accomplish anything in this life because I'm not capable on my own. They are so important that we stick to the right types of things. Understand me this morning. You have the same Spirit inside of you that rose Jesus Christ from the dead. The same power is in each and every one of you if you're a believer. So my question is, will you commit to be with God for these next few weeks? I promise you it'll make all the difference in your marriage. It'll make all the difference in your kids, as a parent, in your household, at work, whatever you're going through. Commit to be like Him and take those steps to have the right types of habits in your lives. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Would you stand to your feet this morning?